right, good afternoon, everybody, and let me start by saying that any time a life is lost, it's tragic for everyone involved. As you know, ACERT has been called in for an officer-involved shooting that occurred today in the Sundance area. And here's what I know so far. At approximately 11 a.m., we were called to our residence in the 100 block of Sunmount Crescent S.E. After receiving a frantic phone call in which screaming could be heard before the call was disconnected. Our officers were dispatched along with EMS. When they got to the house, they found a man in his 20s on the front lawn with serious head injuries. While HAWCS was flying overhead, patrol officers heard activity in the detached garage behind the house. 2 patrol officers moved around to the garage and entered it. Inside, they found a vehicle running with a hose attached. Officers were confronted by a man who was outside that vehicle within the garage. At that time, we had information that led the officers to believe the man was a suspect in the attack on the 20-year-old. Officers issued directions to the man. However, he advanced around the car towards the officers with what is believed to be a large edged weapon. One officer, an 8-year member of the service, fired his service pistol. Our officers and EMS attempted to provide emergency medical assistance to the 76-year-old man. However, he was declared deceased by EMS a short time later. The 20-year-old man, who was found injured on scene, was taken to the hospital in non-life-threatening condition. No officers were injured as a result of this incident. And as this was a very dynamic situation, I fully support our officers who faced a very challenging situation. And to that, I'll take any questions.
Can you talk a bit about the relation between the 2 people involved?
That'll be left to be fully explored by ACERT, but we believe it was a family type relationship. So.
Chief, was the weapon that was used by the weapon that the man had in his hand? Is it believed that that was the same one that was used on the 20-year-old?
Again, I think something that'll come out from the ACERT investigation, but there's likely multiple weapons.
Were there other weapons seized from the home?
I don't know at this point. That'll come from ACERT. ACERT will have to sort of divulge that. At that point, as soon as we dealt with that scene, ACERT will take over, and then they'll manage that from there. So.
You said there was a hose attached to the vehicle. Was it a suicide by gunshot?
Don't know the motivation, obviously, at this point. There's just a scenario that we're faced with going into the garage. That's one of the things the officers noted right away. So.
Obviously another officer involved shooting with Calgary police. I mean, with everything that the force had to go through over the last month or 2 or so, I mean, just can you talk at all about just the morale of the force right now? I mean, are you noticing that there's more stress or there's more frustration or anything like that with just what's been in the news over the last couple of months? Well,
anytime you have these events, it affects the membership. And affects the membership because it's the most difficult thing we will do at any given circumstance. But in situations like this, we ask the community and the service ask our members to put themselves in harm's way. And when it happens, we want our members to feel safe and feel supported when they go through this. And, in this circumstance, I believe our officers did as well as they could to resolve the situations.
Chief, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the number of officer-involved shootings this year. Our records show about 7 compared to a much fewer number in the last couple of years. Can you explain why that's happening?
Well, I don't have any particular analysis about why so many this year. I think obviously one shooting doesn't have a relationship to the next shooting. One thing that we do look at, we look at each and every incident to make sure that our training, our practices, our supervision is aligned well, make sure that we don't have something systemic in the organization that we may have to deal with. But at this stage, I've seen none of that. I know it's been a difficult year. We've had some difficult situations, and again, when our officers are faced with a situation where they believe they are faced with death or grievous harm, that we want them to respond appropriately in those situations. I don't expect our officers to put themselves in unnecessary danger, but we also want them to make sure they have all the resources available to them to resolve situations the best way they can.
And there's no indication in this situation that, unlike others where there have been drug incidents or other kind of violent backgrounds to it, this didn't have a connection to something that might prompt this kind of action?
Well, like so many calls, you have to remember what our officers are dispatched to. So many times officers are dispatched to something where they believe they're attending for a certain reason, and then they're suddenly faced with another situation. And that would be very similar in this circumstance. You're dispatched to a call where there's of violence in the home and someone is seriously injured and you believe you're attending to that and suddenly you're faced with an attacker, and that happens in a very, very short period of time with not a lot of forewarning, and you're then left to respond with what's before you. So it certainly is very difficult. These aren't planned events. You don't go there knowing this is what you're going to see. You go there, you're safe, you have enough officers, enough backup in place to be as safe as you can possibly be, but ultimately at the end of the day, you're confronted with situations that are oftentimes very dangerous.
Chief, did the officer have an opportunity to deploy a taser?
Again, that'll come out of the ACERT investigation. At this point, again, I think it was a very short period of time from the time they actually entered the garage till it was concluded with a shot.
Chief, I know you recently spoke about this, but are you at all concerned about, what faith the public is going to have after yet another one of these incidents?
I am completely answerable to the community. So yes, every time we have to do something like this, it is another opportunity for us to talk to the community, to be accountable to the community, to make sure everything we do is fair and above board and accurate. So again, ACERT plays a very strong role at this point. ACERT is going to step in and make sure all the evidence is contained. They have a thorough and professional investigation conducted, and we'll await their outcome. That's the best message to give to the public in those instances where we are dealing with difficult situations, if we do have strong oversight and a strong independent investigation that will occur.
Can you comment on how the officer's doing? I don't know if you have a chance to spoken to that officer?
I haven't spoken to him yet, but the officer is being supported. The officer will be being looked after both at home and by the membership, so we'll probably get a chance to talk to him tomorrow a bit and see how he's doing, but at this stage I hope he's doing okay.
And are you able to comment a bit about the officer, their history with the service?
Nothing more than other he's an 8-year officer, and from what I see of the situation, I just believe he did the best he could in that circumstance.
And because it's happened a few times where obviously police are defending themselves. So is it maybe less about the what's happening with the training or the officers, or just the public? Like, it seems like they're becoming more assertive towards police, not maybe acting differently.
Well, I'm not going to I don't think this is what would involve any particular trending. Every call is really unique on its own merits, and so when we go to difficult calls like this, where there's extreme amount of violence and there's sort of the chaos you experience in the initial moments of the call, things change quickly, and so each one has its own unique attributes to it that we have to manage. And we'll always look, when we look backwards, we'll always look at things like you talked about. Are there other systemic issues I can look at on this? But that's before me right now, and we'll work through some of those problems. But this one, I would only say, based on its own merits, I believe our officer did the best he could for that situation.
And had you been to this home before? Was there any mental issues? Or?
I asked, and I didn't see a particular history there. Now, any sort of issues with the victim and or the other victim at the scene, those things we'll discover in time. I mean, nothing like that led us to respond differently in this particular call.
Right.
Chief, there was a lot of talk earlier in the year about officer-worn body cameras. Can you tell us what the status is of that?
Yeah, there's still, I know we've talked about this a little bit the last couple of weeks. We are into a brand new procurement of the cameras now. Our previously issued cameras, we couldn't get them to work in a satisfactory way, so we're back looking at procurement. So as you know, through the city, as we go through a procurement process, a thoughtful, fair, competitive process, it'll take us a little bit of time to go through that, but we will anticipate having them in short orders.